Yeah! That's what I'm talking about. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here for the Natural Gamers. I'm going to be riding solo for this review because I'm the only one who finished it. And the game we're going to be talking about today is Dead Space 3. New Visceral Games made, EA published. Video game, the third, obviously the third in this franchise. And just before I start reviewing the game actually itself, I guess I'll talk about a little bit about like how I feel about these games in general and the Dead Space trilogy. But when I first played the first Dead Space, I really loved it. It was definitely felt like a throwback to like proper survival horror. Maybe it was probably a little bit too hand-holdy, but I think you can make that argument for most modern games. They're a little too hand-holdy, a little too linear, because you have this ability, just like you do in all the Dead Space games, where you have like this laser beam shoots out of your hand, basically tells you where you gotta go. But it was a pretty innovative game. It had a cool, different mechanic as far as like, you know, how to battle the monsters and like kind of eviscerating their limbs and ripping limbs off and stuff like that, and a mixture of like telekinetic powers and stuff like that. It was just it was a different, like really cool, like kind of new IP a few years ago when the first Dead Space came out. I believe I got that game like on launch when it first came out, and I really loved it. I've probably beaten it like 2 or 3 times in the preceding years. It ended up being like one of my favorite games that came out that year. And then a couple years after that, Dead Space 2 came out. I was really excited about it. Dead Space 2, while I think it retains a lot of the Dead Space 1, like as far as like creepy atmosphere, there's a few like really effective scenes and stuff like that, and it kind of logically like makes the story continue. Like, it didn't seem like totally absurd. You learned more about just basically the world that the first Dead Space existed in, or the universe rather, I guess. Just like learned more about just like the social aspects of things that were going on, and how like maybe these like alien artifacts are kind of part of a larger plot, and they were able to expand on that pretty well. The thing that was disappointing, and I know a lot of critics came out and said that it was more, the focus had been more action oriented. And that's true. I think that's a fair criticism. It did get a little bit farther away from maybe its kind of survival horror-ish type of elements in the first one, because the first one, what makes it so creepy and scary is the just desolation. You're kind of on your own that entire game. Dead Space 2, there's a lot more character interaction. You're not necessarily really on your own, or at least it doesn't feel like you are as much. The enemy variety was a little lacking. And like there was just less opportunity. I mean, that's the hard thing when you're doing an iteration of something. Like, you're never going to be as scared as you were the first time when these elements like were presented to you. Like, I remember the first Dead Space, like, you know, when the monsters like were busting out of the air vents and stuff like that. Like, for the first half of that game, like, it is a stressful, terrifying like event, like because you'd never kind of experienced something like that, and on that degree, at least in the modern generation. It was the first game of the modern generation to kind of do something like that, and it was new and it was different. Dead Space 2, like, it does less opportunity for that stuff, but like I said, because it's iterative, like it's the second time around, you come to expect things like that. So, but there was a really great attention to detail as far as like sound design, and the action was good. Like, the controls were a little bit tighter. Upgrading abilities and stuff like that was really cool. They tacked on like a multiplayer for it that was kind of very forgettable. I think I probably played it for a couple hours. I never really delved too much into it because I just didn't really care about it, to be honest. That's not like why I would want to play like a Dead Space game. It's not really for multiplayer opportunities. Not to say that like if they were to make like a really cool, interesting one, like I wouldn't want to play it. But anyways, so moving on now to the game that just came out, or at least a few weeks ago came out, Dead Space 3. Now, like, I think a lot of these games, and I think like you could kind of see this in Dead Space 2, like it went from like a survival horror to more of like an action epic. And I think a lot of like more modern iterations of like survival horror franchises have done like very similar things. Like, I actually got a chance to pick up Resident Evil 6 for like 20 bucks, so I'm actually playing through that. Probably review that sometime in the near future. But like that, I noticed with that game it did the kind of a similar thing where it's like a blockbuster action movie. Like, that's kind of what it is. It's a lot more linear, a lot less kind of chance for exploration. as far as like just the main core game play goes, like the controls are fantastic. I think they like really like tighten things up to a large degree. It feels good, you know, it felt really great, and it felt cool just to play another Dead Space, even though maybe it's not necessarily like horror oriented, like it was more an action game, for like a third-person action game, and like for the most part, like I was okay with that. I'll get into some more of my criticisms on the back end of this, but and as far as the story goes, like I don't know if you like, I think it starts off awkwardly and very abruptly, where Isaac is in a very like different, and it's almost kind of weird that he's in this place, that he is as far as this, like the plot goes, like as far as like the end of Dead Space 2 goes, and then the way Dead Space 3 starts. I'm not sure like it really, they tried to connect it, and it just, and because they do like a little brief recap or whatever, and I don't know, that felt the most spotty to me. I mean, but once you start playing there are things in the story, like I don't want to talk about too much of the spoilers, but there's a few, like there's like a love triangle, there's like some like weird relationship stuff that like felt like odd, especially considering like the past 2 games and what Isaac had gone through with this other person. Ooh. So I mean, but like, so I guess we'll just get into like some more of criticisms I have of the game. I think the game overstays its welcome. I was like, after about 10 hours, I was kind of done. The last few hours of the game, I felt like were a fucking major slog. Because the thing, it gets repetitive, it gets tedious. Like, they tried to do a lot of new things, which I appreciate. Like, this game is not a game that's resting on the laurels of Dead Space 2. Like, they're always trying to iterate. They're always trying to, like, make something new and exciting for kind of, like, every third of the game. There was, like, kind of almost like a new mechanic presented. Like, in the last third of the game, for example, like, you're kind of, like, jetpacking through, like, almost like these, I don't know what you would call them, like, just like these flying sequences, basically, with you, and, like, being thrown through some sort of, like, warp system, and, like, and you had to dodge stuff and, like, kill enemies and stuff, and it was fun, but the problem was they kept doing it, like, it just didn't stop. Like, it happened, like, I felt like, you know, every like 20 minutes I was just doing another one of those things, and really for no other reason than just like to do it, because they'd set it up that that's what happens when you go through these portals that they use as a mechanic, and like to get to other places of this alien like spaceship or whatever, and it just got kind of annoying. I think the enemy variety, like once you are 2/3 through the game, like you don't see any new enemies, which I don't know, like, it's okay. And then there's this one, like, the boss fights in this game, it's the same enemy, like, over and over and over again until finally the last time you actually kill it off, like, and it's just kind of like this, it's supposed to be, like, kind of this ominous, like, specter, like, it's always around, it's always causing all this, like, havoc and problems when you're on the ice planet, and, I don't know, it just got, like, kind of annoying, to be honest with you. Like, I was just annoyed, I was just bored, because I think, if I'm not, I might be incorrect. I think you basically the fight style is the same every single time you face this enemy, so that kind of felt kind of lazy. Like, it just, like, this is becoming like a thing, like an EA thing, where like the last third of these games always feel like rushed or like underdeveloped in some like way. And I think Dead Space 3 is like just following suit with that as well. But I think you have to give credit to like the team, like, for trying something new, like, and that was impressive. I was impressed with that, like, as far as just like mechanically and like kind of things they were introducing in the game. They tried to make a new game. They weren't just trying to make like Dead Space 2.5, if you will. Like, they were really trying to make like a new type of Dead Space game, and I appreciate that, especially in a world where like we have just like sequel after sequel, and I would name like the Assassin's Creed franchise as like a major offender of this, is that they're boring, because it's almost the same game every time, unless you're like really tied to the fiction. Like, it gets repetitive and boring, but that's a discussion for another time. Well, they introduced this new like co-op system where you can play throughout the game and also play some other like missions in a co-op way. I think that's interesting. I don't know if it's completely successful. I kind of tinkered with it a little bit. I didn't really play too much of the co-op. But yeah, not that, because I'm not like one of these people that feels like, oh, that defeats the entire purpose of like a Dead Space game and the solitude of like doing things by yourself and stuff. Like, I understand, because they transitioned from like a survival horror to an action horror franchise, so like it didn't really bother me. I think like some of like the environments are a little bit too similar all the time. Like I never like, you know, you spend so much time on this like ice planet, which you've probably seen in the trailers and stuff if you haven't played it, that like it just gets repetitive and boring, and you're kind of just in the same areas over and over again. They tried to change it up, but every place just always ends up feeling the same. Although I do think it was cool. The ice planet was cool because it did actually made me feel like I was playing The Thing. The Thing is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I actually kind of like that video game. Not to say it's not like a good video game in a classic sense, but I do enjoy it, mostly because of, I think there's some interesting ideas there and stuff. But anyways, beyond that, I don't know if I can really give a solid recommend to Dead Space 3. Because overall, like I said, like the first half, the first like 8 to 10 hours, I was really enjoying it. I was really enjoying it, and I was doing kind of all the side mission stuff and all that stuff. Like, I was enjoying it, and then it just became a tedious slog, like towards the end, where I almost like didn't want to finish the game. I didn't care if I finished the game or not, which is weird because I'm usually like I can bust through any game really. I've played Final Fantasy 13 all the way through. Like, I don't know, like really. It just overstays its welcome, like, and that's the problem. It just becomes like boring and tedious, and the variety they try to offer towards the last leg of the game isn't really. It's just kind of variations on things you've already played earlier in the game, just kind of beefed up. The one last thing I want to talk about though is just like this microtransaction bullshit, because they have this upgrade system where you like can upgrade your weapons, but the cool thing about it is you can kind of modify them in any way, and you can make all these very unique, interesting weapons, and you can even upload your schematics, like your blueprints for these weapons, like to the larger community, and people can like share and back and forth and shit like that. And I think that's really awesome. That's a really great innovative thing. I'm not sure, it felt weird in a Dead Space game, to be honest. No, I mean, I guess that's probably not like necessarily totally fair, but I just don't think it seemed out of place, and it seemed like distracting, because like a lot of times, like in the game, you were always looking for just like more materials to build these new guns and stuff like that, or different kind of guns, different variations. So you're almost just like on a resource hunt like half the time, and not in a way where like I need to find health packs or something like that. Not like that at all. And the reason why part of the system they instilled in that was these microtransaction things where you can go through PSN or Xbox Live or whatever, and you can buy the resources, or you can buy schematics, or you can buy guns and stuff like that. And I think I feel like that was implemented in the game, like this mod system, just so they could do that. Like, that's what it felt like. I think it's an interesting mod system, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it was tacked on into the game in a very like odd way. And the fact that like the resources for things like to make cool things are almost like not impossible, but just like detracts from the enjoyment of that game. And just to find like the rare stuff and all that, like, and they're very much like pushing you to just go buy it from the PSN store for, I mean, people could argue it's $1, it's $2, like, or you don't have to do it, but I think that just detracts from just the game experience as a whole, because it's always distracting, it's always taking you out of the game, it's always just making you shake your controller at the fact that like, oh, what is this bullshit? Like, why can't I paid $60 for this game? It's not a free-to-play game, it's not a freemium game, this is not a discounted game. Like, it's a $60 game, and you're like basically withholding shit from me. Like, and I'm just like, really, EA is just really out of control with this stuff, but people keep buying it, people keep doing it. I mean, like, everybody has a choice. Like, if obviously the majority rules to a certain degree, like, if people will put up with this stuff and not like be vocal about it, not vocal about it in a way like start a petition or whatever, just stop buying their products, or let it be known, like, only buy them used or buy them at discounts. Like, don't ever buy them like day one launch stuff, because it's getting kind of to absurd levels. It really is. Like, I can't say that like offering those things as a side thing for people that want to have them is, I think that's fine, but I think when you actually make it part of the game, that make it like that much like more difficult, or it's totally distracting, and like always is kind of telling you that like, oh, well, you could go purchase this here. Like, I feel like it detracts from the gameplay experience. Like, it detracts from it being like a piece of like entertainment, and I found that's really unfortunate, and it really sucks that like EA is doing this, and they do it a lot, and like, you know, it's just a practice I don't necessarily believe in. I think it's anti-consumer. I think it's like odd. It's weird, and especially like we have like, you know, we're in like as a country we're in like economic dire straits, and you're trying to nickel and dime fucking gamers that are already like, if you're a gamer as a hobbyist, like if it's your hobby, it's a fucking expensive hobby. Like we're paying $60 for like new games. That's almost $100. Like that's, you know, while paying almost $4 a gallon for gas at the same time. Like, you know, as gamers, we do support this industry in a big bad way. Like, you know, without us, they don't have jobs. They don't, like, these companies would not be as flourishing the way they are. And it would be nice to have, like, at least treated with a modicum of respect. You know what I mean? Well, I don't want to get on. I'll get off my soapbox and stop preaching at you. But yeah, my overall impressions or thoughts on Dead Space 3, to kind of sum it all up at the end here, is like I enjoyed it. Don't buy it brand new. I think if you were to pay $30 for this game, like, I think you'd feel like, oh, that was fair, like money well spent. I think you're gonna enjoy it up to a certain point. Like, even if you're a casual like Dead Space player, like you like, oh, if they're there, you'll play it. Like, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a lot of fun. I don't want to like make it sound like this was not a fun game, because it was fun, but it just like towards the end kind of overstays its welcome because it's a little tedious. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. I'm Shaun, and I'm a natural gamer, and I will talk to you next time I have something to talk about.